Good morning, everyone.
Well, we're
Welcome
actually like
to,
4 minutes in the afternoon, Trina.
well, good afternoon. It's 12:04, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our June EELAC meeting. I guess next slide, if we're going to go over the agenda. So, and is Kumar here?
Kumar is not on, but of course he's always welcome to hop on later and give a welcome, but go ahead, Trina.
All right. Well, welcome, everyone. Hopefully you guys are enjoying summer. I guess we're officially in summer now in mid-June. And today we're actually going to focus on our network, participatory action research, and centering worker voice. We're going to talk about a worker-centered benchmark project. And actually, I'm just going to pass it over to Fatima to introduce Alex and to get us started. So looking forward to the
Awesome. Thanks so
conversation.
much. We are on a time crunch because Chioki does have a hard stop, so we want to make sure that we get everything done. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you also to all of our participants, and especially Alex and Chioki for all the heavy lifting that you all did behind the scenes to get today's conversation underway. We are really excited to introduce the Worker-Centered Benchmark Project run by CSW, Corporation for a Skilled Workforce. I think it was maybe in January of this year that Chioki had reached out and said there's somebody that, there's a group that would be a great fit to speak at EELAC. And just a reminder for everybody that really that's how our EELAC, people come to the table many times. That's how our EELAC people and presenters come to the table, because somebody's heard some great presentation and thinks that it's good for our table to hear. As a reminder, everything is recorded and all of these recordings are sent out. We have a new website, which I'll talk about later on today. And all the recordings are on that website too. So I am going to hand it over to Alex Breen, who is a Senior Policy Associate on Improving Practices and Outcome team at CSW. And we have several different aspects and different facets that we're gonna look at from about the Worker-Centered Benchmark Project, WCPBP. Even the acronym is a little difficult, but we'll get through it. So Alex, I am going to hand it over to you, and I'm going to start sharing your slides.
Terrific. It's so nice to meet everyone. I've been here a couple times and have just been really impressed by the mission, the content, and when thinking about places to speak about this work that we think is really important, this was at or near the top of the list, definitely at the top of the list in terms of places in Southeast Michigan, as there was so much synergy around just this commitment to worker and learner voice and authentic mechanisms to center worker and learner voice in how programs are designed, how programs are implemented, and how programs are evaluated. So I'm actually not going to do a lot of talking today, but I could not be more appreciative for having the opportunity to introduce you all to two incredible Southeast Michigan Workforce Development Program alumni in Marwa Barrow and Terrell Hemphill. After accessing in workforce programs in 2022 and 2023 at Zaman International and at Scholas, respectively, Marwa and Terrell completed a year of research with me and Chioki and the Corporation for a Skilled Workforce Research and Evaluation team that sought to identify the outcomes that matter most to learners and workers. To detail that process and its key findings, I present Marwa and Terrell, and a really quick backstory on our two esteemed guests today. Marwa is a full-time mother of two daughters who understands the challenges of re-entering the workforce after a significant break. Upon returning to Michigan in 2021, Marwa faced difficulties finding suitable employment due to changes in the job market and extensive caregiving responsibilities. Marwa was fortunate enough to receive training through Zaman International, an organization that played a vital role in facilitating her adjustment to the local work environment. and who presented her with the opportunity to work with CSW on the Worker Center benchmarking project. Marwa describes her experience on the Worker Center benchmarking project as an opportunity to empower herself, her network, and to support others facing similar challenges. She says, today, together, we can foster resilience, collaboration, and empowerment, ensuring opportunities for everyone to thrive in their careers. Terrell is a native of Detroit and a University of Chicago graduate who recently became a certified IT specialist through Scholas and is currently on his way to becoming a subject matter expert in cloud management and software administration. So if we have any issues on this call, we know where to turn. Terrell enjoys building decision-making frameworks and evaluating systems with various goals and procedures, while his philosophy background has equipped him to work well in groups and in discussion-based environments. Terrell's work experience in e-commerce and operation management adds elements of real-time problem-solving, time management, and team management. And Terrell describes himself as a creative problem solver looking to leave a lasting impression on the budding IT industry. So to describe the Worker Center benchmarking project, the history of the project, the why, the process, the methodology, and the research findings, I cannot be more excited to pass it over to Terrell and to Marwa. And Terrell is going to kick us off in giving a history of the project.
Thank you, Alex. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. That was a great introduction from Alex. So I'm just going to hop right into the content. Next slide, please. So initially, just a quick project overview. Supported by the Annie E. Casey Foundation, the Worker Center benchmarking project seeks to identify and understand the outcomes that matter most to those the workforce system serves, the learners and the workers themselves. Next slide. So why do we do this work? Sorry. Why do we do this work? Creative work, one, to create workforce development metrics that are more reflective of worker and learner voice, just trying to make sure that the workforce program goals are aligned with those of the participants. Two, filling critical knowledge gaps in the workforce system. So identifying needs of the industry, future needs of the industry, and trying to equip participants to fill those gaps and fill those needs. Pave the way for providers, funders, and policymakers to consider alternative definitions of workforce program success. Again, that relates back to making sure that the program goals are aligned with the learner goals, and allow workforce providers, the agency, to create and run the programs that they believe will best support the participants. So this is I think, a really important point, because as we'll discuss, sometimes metrics of success are kind of locked in stone and are really these sort of hard and fast rules. But this sort of project allows us to identify other metrics of success that we may not have been thinking about before, that could allow different programs and different program, I guess I would say, directives and initiatives to be born. Next slide, please. Why is this project important? So workforce programs are often designed and measured according to the labor market demands, business needs, best practice models, and/or funder requirements. So a lot of times the curriculums are designed for the needs of the funders. And what we wanted to do with this project was kind of look at the other side of that coin and just think about the needs of the learners and the actual participants of the program. A next question was, are programs achieving their intended impact within the communities where they operate? Are we creating, what are the goals? What are we trying to do? What is the impact that we're trying to have on these communities? Are we just trying to produce more people to kind of join the workforce, or are we trying to create lasting leaders and people that are going to sort of change the game? And how do we know what communities want from workforce programs, or even how success is defined by the learners we are serving? Again, trying to look on the other side of that coin and understanding, if we're trying to serve communities, what is it that those communities actually need, and making sure that programs align with those things. Next slide. So let workers and learners define success. So if we're going to modernize the workforce system, we need workforce program metrics that are more inclusive and culturally responsive, reflective of the local community context and condition, flexible to the unique challenges faced by the workforce communities, reflect the worker perspectives and lived experiences. So really making sure that these programs resonate and speak with those that they are meant to serve, and better position practitioners for a shared understanding of success. So again, bringing all of these things together and sort of building that community think and that community bond around what success looks like. Next slide, please. So the research process and the methodology. So all the research protocols and questions were developed by an advisory council that Mara and I participated in with, I think, about 6 or 7 other people, 5 to 6, something like that. And with excellent help from Alex and Chioki. So we did this in 2 parts. We did focus groups. So we had 15 focus groups in 2 languages with more than 55 participants coming from New York, Michigan, and Pennsylvania to talk about, another thing that was different was the type of workforce program. So for instance, mine was based in IT. We had some that were more based on like agriculture, et cetera, et cetera. So trying to really get a mixed bag there. And then a survey, which was completed by 121 participants from those same communities. And that's where we kind of start to pool our data. So before we move on to the metrics, just wanted to reiterate that our real goal here was to understand what it was that participants in these programs needed from the program, and trying to identify ways that learners felt successful or what they thought success was, and trying to bridge that gap or any gaps that may have been present between the project and the funders' goals and those community goals. So,
excuse me, Terrell.
Sure.
I'm going to speak more about the research process and methodology. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. The focus group interviews and survey questions were a crucial part of our efforts to gather qualitative insights from participants and alumni in the workforce program. The goal was to understand their perspectives on how to measure the success of the workforce program from their point of view. So we developed questions that focus on workforce participants' perceptions of the benefits and impact of the program, relationships they have gained because of the program, work experience, professional and personal goals, and like overall program feedback. To make a long story short, we have conducted 15 focus groups in 2 languages with 55 participants from all over Michigan, Pennsylvania, and New York. We first had a lot of meetings with several experts and professionals to know how success is measured from the workforce perspective. After a general overview, we started our readings on conducting qualitative research. Then we agreed on leading focus group interviews. So we started brainstorming the questions and came up with more than 58 questions. When we finished writing the interview and focus group protocols, we finalized the questions and started conducting focus groups. All the research protocols and questions that the Advisory Council developed were supported by the CSW's research and evaluation team. Participants were asked questions that focus on them, on their feelings and thoughts, what motivated them, if they were supported emotionally, what obstacles they faced, and what success looked like for them. In general, the questions were personalized to let participants feel safe, heard, and belong to this workforce program. We then transcribed all the focus group interviews, analyzed the themes, and extracted new metrics. And to know more about participants' insights, we developed a survey with 30 detailed questions, which was filled out by 121 participants. And we came up with 6 new metrics to measure success in workforce programs. We will be talking more about some of them in the next slides. Back to you, Terrell.
Thank you. That was excellent. So yes, next slide, please. So introducing some of the metrics, and Mara and I are going to tag team this one here. But the first metric we started was participants' sense of safety and belonging in a workforce and development program. And what we wanted to understand by asking with this metric rather was how comfortable people actually felt participating in the workforce programs. One of the things that we found through the surveys was that you had several participants who honestly just didn't feel comfortable in like classroom environments, right? I can think back to classmates talking about how they felt like they didn't do well in school, and now that they were back in a classroom environment, they were apprehensive, they were nervous, anxious, things like that. So creating a sense of belonging and allowing people to feel safe and asking questions and not knowing and learning in the environment is critical to the success of the participants. One of the things that we noted also was that the sense of belonging would help alleviate some of the other issues that may come up in a workforce program. So life happens, right? So there may be various obstacles that learners are facing while participating in these programs, but when they feel safe, like they belong and accepted in the program, a lot of times that can be a big motivating factor to try to get over some of those issues. And Mara will take the next one.
Thank you, Terrell. So the second metric.
Next slide, sorry.
Yeah. I can get and lose 10 jobs in a year. It doesn't matter. Increased sense of self-confidence and sense of self-esteem will stay with me for life. This is a quote taken by one of the participants in a focus group interview. So building self-confidence and self-esteem is fundamental for personal and professional growth because it empowers individuals to take on challenges, pursue opportunities, and succeed in their careers. Participants in the focus groups describe the workforce program as a life changer, significantly impacting their lives and perspectives and their sense of pride in personal achievements. Focus group interviews showed that participants with boosted self-esteem have increased levels of self-respect and self-value. They started to seek better opportunities, seek higher education, and work towards being the best version of themselves. And because they believe in themselves, they think that they deserve better, their families deserve better, and also their community deserves better. So people with high levels of self-confidence would lead to a better community and a better future. Next slide, please. When measuring this metric, it's important to ask questions that assess both their perceived confidence levels and the factors that contribute to or detract from their confidence. For example, how confident they are in the technical skills related to their job, how confident they are in their ability to communicate effectively with their colleagues and supervisors, how confident they are in problem-solving abilities within the work context, what challenges and barriers affected their confidence levels during the workforce program. So gathering this information can help program administrators tailor interventions to support participants in building and maintaining confidence as they transition into the workforce. Back to you, Terrell.
Thank you. Sorry, I threw us off a little bit. I got a little confused with my version of the PowerPoint slide. So next slide, please. And then one more. All right, now we're set. Sorry. Metric 3, social capital. Next slide. So a quote from a participant: often networking transcends things that may have hindered participants, such as a lack of experience or a criminal record. Participants who have been able to use the network and gain opportunities despite such barriers directly reflect the effectiveness of a program in relationship/relevancy with employers and within the industry participants are entering. Next slide. So why should social capital be considered as a metric? So one of the reasons that in our survey of workforce participants and alumni, a lot of times that professional networks and relationships and opportunities were prioritized over just getting a job. Now this will vary depending on different types of programs. For instance, we got different responses from individuals that participated in like a boot camp sort of scenario compared to an organization that's more community-based. So in focus groups, participants express the importance of networking, and often networking transcends things, like we said in the last quote, that may have hindered participants, such as experience or things even like a criminal record. So being able to sort of sell yourself and learning the tools to articulate your skill set, your story, your narrative in a professional context is key to creating, again, like a sense of belonging, that raising that self-esteem of participants and allowing them to be more effective, not only in the actual workforce, but also leading up to the workforce. So that entire interview process, application process, all of that, we see benefits throughout. Participants who have found value and been able to use their network and gain opportunities often directly reflect the effectiveness of a program's overall reputation. So in instances where even if an individual graduates a program and isn't necessarily able to find a job immediately, the skills, the mindset, as we'll talk about, and just sort of the soft skills that they learn still allows them to see themselves successful throughout that program and graduating from that program. So really just trying to, again, focus on the learner aspect and wanting learners to feel successful more so than necessarily having an impact on the industry. Next slide, please. So how do we measure this metric? So peer-led one-on-one and group interviews, this is very much a qualitative metric, and it's something that we have to really open our ears and listen to the people that we're asking to understand what's going on. So lots of surveys, lots of questionnaires, and we've got a couple examples of questions. So has participation in your workforce program opened additional opportunities for you, either personally or professionally, right? So just being able to, I'll give an anecdotal example. we had to learn sort of like elevator pitches and build like kind of short 1-page, like some professional summaries. And what a lot of people found was that working on these elevator pitches, they became a lot more confident in just speaking about themselves, even in just personal conversations and just meeting people out and, you know, maybe out on the town or something like that. So the skills that we learn in these workforce programs are transferable. So making sure that we put a focus on those things allows people to become just more well-rounded individuals and not just participants in the workforce. Another question might be, do you notice a change in the way that you communicate now versus before the program? Or how comfortable do you feel communicating your goals and interests after the program? So that speaks to that earlier example where individuals before sometimes didn't have a situation where people were asking them their goals, asking them their aspirations. But through these workforce programs and through defining metrics of success that pertain directly to the learners, you're able to develop these skills and build people up in ways that they weren't being built up before. Next slide. And I'm going to kick this one on over to Mara.
Thank you, Terrell. Growth and emotional intelligence, regulation, shift, and mindset. Next slide, please. Yeah. Emotional intelligence and mindset play key roles in navigating workplace challenges, building relationships, and achieving career goals. Developing these skills enhances adaptability and resilience. Next slide, please. This metric was a significant insight, allowing participants to view life from new perspectives. Participants in the focus groups emphasized the importance of the shift in mindset from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, and how it helped them overcome past negative educational experiences and foster a positive attitude towards learning and work. Also, participants reported learning how to communicate effectively and build healthy relationships within the community by applying skills in real-world settings. Participants with a growth mindset view challenges as opportunities to learn and grow rather than as threats. This mindset encourages them to persevere through difficulties and setbacks, leading to greater resilience in problems. Participants with emotional intelligence are more adaptable to change and more willing to embrace new experiences and challenges. A growth mindset promotes a focus on effort, learning, and continuous improvement. So participants are more likely to actively seek out learning opportunities, take constructive feedback positively, and try to gain more skills. Next slide, please. To measure this metric, we could use surveys to assess participants' mindset orientations before and after the program. We could gather feedback from colleagues and supervisors regarding changes in participants' attitudes towards challenges, setbacks, and learning opportunities. We could track participants' performance and progress over time to see if they are more willing to take on challenges and actively seek growth opportunities. We could also ask questions like, to what extent are you able to see things from different perspectives? How confident do you feel in navigating workplace challenges and using them as opportunities to grow? Measuring the growth in emotional intelligence and regulation shift in mindset provides valuable insights into the comprehensive development of participants in the workforce programs. It highlights their ability to navigate professional challenges effectively, enhance workplace relationships, and sustain personal growth beyond program completion. In summary, the focus group interviews highlighted the need for workforce programs to foster not just skill development, but also personal growth, mindset shifts, and community engagement, all contributing to a comprehensive life-changing experience. I'll pass it over to Alex.
Thank you so much, Marwa and Terrell, for sharing a little bit about your personal experiences and the research that you developed, as well as the metrics you developed, how to measure those metrics, and questions to ask participants. In the coming weeks, a report, No Decisions, or Make Decisions With Us, Not Decisions Without Us. That was
No decisions about us without us.
Yes, thank you. It's much better than the version that I came up with.
That's
Is going to be coming out, and it's going to be detailing the research process that Terrell, Marwa, and their 4 peers employed, as well as their key findings and recommendations. That is going to be dropping, and we'll make sure that Sonia and Fatima share that with this network. But in thinking and putting together today's session, we thought it was really important to hear from participants who'd conducted the research themselves. On the flip side, we also thought it was really important to uplift the experiences of the workforce practitioners that supported this process. And we are really thankful to be joined by Gigi Salka, the Chief Workforce Development Officer at Zaman International. And something incredible about Gigi's work on this project and Gigi's work with Marwa is that Gigi and her team have actually taken some of the recommendations, particularly around shifts in mindset, and really incorporated that into how they capture the impact of their work, seeking to go beyond just asking participants, how much do you make and whether or not you have a job. Gigi and her team are fully engineering a platform and a dashboard that gets at the holistic program experience and the shifts in mindset that participants go through while experiencing a program. And to introduce Gigi and Zaman, I am going to pass it back over to Fatima.
So on a personal note, I am really excited to introduce Gigi, longtime, lifelong friend, and really happy that you're able to join us and introduce to our table really the work that you did with CSW, but then also also the work that you do at Zaman, which is quite remarkable. So Alex kind of gave a idea of who Gigi is. She's the Chief Workforce Officer. And Gigi, I'm going to have you just go ahead and let us know what, especially like I know there's people on this call that are workforce development providers. And so like challenges, what it is that that was helpful for you as a workforce development provider. And I know you have a lot of other things that you're going to be talking about. So over to you. And let me just know when you want me to switch slides.
Sounds good. Welcome, everybody. My name is Gigi Salta. I'm the Chief Workforce Development Officer at Zaman. Giving you a brief background about the organization. Zaman is a humanitarian organization. We are located in Inkster. We service marginalized women and children. We have a large refugee and immigrant population, but we also service a lot of what we call our native speakers or our community members. Zaman approaches everything in a holistic approach, kind of exactly what the speakers were referring to. So at our Hope for Humanity Center, we do try to provide a one-stop shop for our participants. So we are excited that the grand opening of our health clinic happened yesterday, Alex. So that is up and going. They already saw the first 3 patients. So that's amazing. We have our vocational training on site. We also have our literacy on site, career development, and supportive services through our basic needs program. So we try to provide that holistic approach. What happened with regards to what we call the BOOST program, which is the Building Ongoing Opportunities Through Skills Training, that was a result of Zaman's vision and mission of always having client at the core. So everything that we do is client driven. So we started off back in 1990 something. We were doing basically just basic needs assistance, food, service, shelter. But then we surveyed our clients and said, what else can we do for you? They identified that they wanted to learn English, they like to sew, and they like to cook. And so that's basically how our workforce development program started. It was based on what the clients themselves identified as their interests. I know that goes against the common way that workforce development works, with looking at labor force data, labor market data, and seeing the jobs that are out there. Yes, that is important, but creating a workforce development program where the trainings that you're offering do not speak to the clients that you're that you're serving, you're already asking, you're asking for trouble. It's just not going to be as successful. So everything we do is client driven, which goes in line with what the research has just shown, the CSW research. So when we started with Alex and Fatima, actually, I don't even really know what the next slides are, so please feel free, because I gave them to Alex and I can't really remember. Yeah, so we talked about our mission. This is our client journey. They enter through our client services department, which is they enter in crisis and instability. That's where they get their supportive services. They get their barrier removal, case management, identify their SMART goals. Once their basic needs have been met, then they are referred to our education and training programs. After they have completed that, then they start pursuing employment opportunities. Zaman's model is based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So we feel that once you stabilize the family with food, clothing, shelter, you cannot expect them to move into education and anything else if that has not been established. So they move up the pyramid from basic needs all the way up to self-actualization. Next slide, please, Fatima. So this is our Boost educational program that I was talking about. We've been doing this since 2016 with our literacy, culinary arts, and industrial sewing programs. So we've been doing it, we're doing it really well, but what we noticed is that a lot of times we are doing a lot of things that we are not measuring. And when we started our conversation with CSW, we were kind of at the brainstorming cusp phase of how do we measure subjective data and create it into an objective measure. Next, please. So we know that along the way, we are doing so much more than just getting them a job, right? So getting them a job and the employment opportunities, we were already providing those. We were doing workforce readiness and soft skills and all of those things. We brought in a career navigator so that who can do the one-on-one coaching. But how are we gonna be able to measure all that? So again, we went back to our students or our clients and I said, okay, what do you want to see? What are the things that you're doing? Where do you want to work? How do you want to work? And they said, we want to work, but we only work at Zaman. A lot of these people have never worked before. Maybe culturally they haven't worked. Maybe they're immigrants and refugees. Maybe there's a language barrier, transportation, childcare that we all talk about. So again, listening to the needs of our clients, we created on-site opportunities at Zaman. And thus we have our on-site employment in culinary arts. We have our kitchen. We created our Rising Hope Bakery. We also created on-site employment through our sewing factory. But then again, like there's only so many people we can employ. What else can we do? So we created an internship program. So our clients can also go in and they do an unpaid 120-hour internship program. That is a prerequisite to on-site employment at Zaman. It's a win-win for both of us. Our clients have a chance to put something on their resume. They are developing their skills, but then it's also for us to see what is their work ethic and what has happened. Next, please. Back to what I was saying, where getting a job is not enough. And we are not, what I always say is Zaman is not a job placement agency. If you are looking for a job, we are not a good fit for you. We are here to create a career and to create a change in mindset. What Marwa said, I'm happy to hear her say that, because it's exactly how we hope that all of our students that come through us and our clients that come through us is they do have that change in mindset, because we are looking at career growth. We are looking at job retention, and life is going to happen and things are going to happen whether on or off the job. And you're going to have that resilient mindset to be able to tackle all of those things in order to break the cycle of poverty. Everything at Zaman that we do is with our mission of client-centered breaking the cycle of poverty. So teaching English is breaking the cycle of poverty. Workforce training, job placement, basic skill, basic needs, all of those with the center of breaking the cycle of poverty. They don't stand alone in silos. Next. So once we went into this journey, it's like, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to create this mindset change? How are we going to create a process? And how are we going to measure that process? So myself and my teammate, Rania Khalid, who's our workforce coordinator, we went and we became CDF certified, Career Development Facilitator certified. And that was great, because we were trying to develop this concept that we had, and we didn't even know that there's a process and there's ways to do things. So that was amazing for us. So now our workforce development program follows against these three, the scale, right? So they start off with career awareness, they move into career exploration, ownership, and advocacy. This is an actual class that the students take alongside their vocational training classes and their literacy classes. And at the culmination of this class, then they have the one-on-one career navigation. There are assessments and metrics that are administered at each one of these different stages. Next, please. So these are some of the metrics that we developed. We worked with Alex. We also worked with another consultant who has a background in human resources and strategy. We based our metrics on the Hope Employability Scale, as well as the 8 dimensions of wellness. So you can see here whether some of the things that we felt are important for that change of mindset that we are looking to measure. Personal values, self-worth, healthy lifestyles, social improvement, futuristic self. I mean, you guys can read them: work values, occupational values, technology, financial, global, emotional, and intellectual. This was our pilot program because we worked on it over the summer, refined it in the fall, and really implemented it in our winter term. So that was only 22 students that went through that process, but we're excited to delve deep into what those numbers mean and where do we see some pain points that we can either improve our program ourselves or where that can be solved one-on-one with the individual participant. Next, please.
Gigi, that's the last slide.
Yeah, so okay. So because what I shared with Alex, which I can share if anybody's interested, is we have definitions for what each one of those things mean, right? When we are saying we are looking for personal values, what is, what does that mean to us? What does it mean to the participant? Self-worth, where does that mean? And again, that's not something that we just came up with. It is based on the health and employability and the 8 dimensions of wellness. The next step that we're hoping to do, which actually I saw our consultant yesterday, is having a mindset change is not enough if it doesn't lead to behavior change. And so that is some of the things that we're noticing right now. So they're measuring well on that scale, but then we still see areas of improvement with regard to their behavior, showing up on time management, some of those things. So that's what we're looking for next steps is how do we track behavioral change? So does the mindset change actually affect the change in behavior? Because at the end of the day, that's what you really want, is you want to see that change in behavior. So that's where we're at. And if you guys have any questions.
Thank you so much. We could do like a few minutes of questions for Gigi. She's still going to be on as we go into the next section, but we could do a few minutes of questions, and even for Marwa and Terrell, if there's any questions for them.
So I just have a quick question. I love what you're doing. It's unbelievable. It's so client-centered. It's so individual-centered. What we wrestle with and what workforce development agencies typically wrestle with that have state and federal funding is to make sure that you meet the metrics and benchmarks that are imposed upon you and the time frames imposed upon you. So how have you been able to be liberated from that structure? And how has that been? And how have you been able to sustain your work and grow your work? And that I'd love to hear your reflections on that.
We are also a federally funded program. We are a WIOA funded program. So we do have to meet all of those benchmarks that you refer to. So yes, it is a struggle. It is what we had to come to terms with is that it is not for everyone, right? So we have a strong orientation and intake process for anybody coming into our vocational training. That was kind of a hard pill for us to swallow because as a humanitarian organization, you want to help everybody. And we welcome everybody that walks through the door. So it was hard for us to I don't want to say turn people away, but like just ensure that they're able to maintain the level of commitment that is required with this kind of program, right? So we do have 2 tracks. We have a track where, okay, you're just doing your literacy, you're just doing that, but anytime you're going to be in any kind of vocational training, it is going to lead to a life change. And if you're just looking for a job, like I said, we're just not the best place for you. You have to be really looking for that life change and that career. But it is intense, and we had to come to the realization internally too, that it's quality over quantity. So you're not graduating 100 people like you used to. Maybe you're down to graduating. That's why you saw there's only 22 in that cohort. But I have 125 people in the program, but not all 125 people have the commitment, the energy, the capability of going through something so intense.
Thank you so much, Gigi.
Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, too, it's about your resource dollars, right? If we had a blank check, we could do everything. But when you have to actually make those impacts, you have to make some decisions.
Mm-hmm.
But I love how you've interpreted impact and what matters to your participants, to you, to the community, and then really selling that to the funders because that is what matters. I just really love it.
Mm-hmm. Well, because a lot of times too, for us, like she may not be ready today because she has small kids, but maybe in 2 years she will be ready because now kids are in school, right? So she has those tools in the toolbox that she can use.
Mm-hmm. So I think what we'll do is we will segue into Alex and Chioki. We will have time again afterwards to ask more questions, but we, ELAC is all about the action portion and thinking about how we can utilize these tools and these ideas into our table and for all of you to utilize. So Alex and Chioki are going to be doing an interactive portion with us. I don't need to introduce Chioki. Everybody here on our table knows her. So, and let's move over. Go ahead, Alex.
Yes, so we're so excited to have had the opportunity to hear from Marwa, to have heard from Terrell, who is on call right now, and I know is putting out a fire at his job as we speak, not a literal one, but a virtual classroom one, and from Gigi, who's obviously really doing some great trailblazing work in this non-traditional metric field. What we want to do for the remainder of our time today is to get an understanding of how the ELAC network has historically operated in terms of efforts to really authentically center the voices of workers and learners into how programs are developed, how programs are implemented, and how programs are evaluated. And we don't just want to hear about past efforts. We also want to use this as an opportunity to see how work in the vein performed by Marwa, Terrell, and Gigi might be able to be replicated within this network, and how we might be able to explore, kind of what is the move here? Is there an opportunity to bring together ELAC practitioners that are interested in doing some work to better understand the individuals they serve, or develop programs in concert with community, or implement programs or evaluate programs, and really thinking through what's something that would be hyper-regional and really specific to the ELAC network would look like. So to accomplish that, we have built out a mural board that I will be sharing now that gets at, that has 4 quadrants. And those 4 quadrants are, of course, zoom in too much. Has this work been done before? What were the challenges? What are your concerns? What concerns are rising up? Other considerations? What ideas do you have? And the sub-questions are, what opportunities exist? What are untapped potential? Or where do opportunities exist? What has untapped potential? And how should we take action? And I am going to share in the chat the link to the mural and invite everyone to log in. I know that mural might be a new tool for some, so I really want to quickly demonstrate that we have sticky notes for people to write on. And if you find a sticky note that you want to write on, you would double click it, and then you could input, for example, how has work already been performed? I could write worker-centered benchmarking project. And the idea here is that we're going to hang out in each quadrant for about 5 minutes and give people the opportunity to write, and also give people the opportunity to unmute and communicate ideas that they're interested in hearing more about, or work that they've done in this arena that they think is deserving of sharing. And Chioki and I are going to alternate in facilitating quadrants and really try and make it so that we are honoring and learning more about the experience and the expertise in the room, and also using this as an opportunity to crowdsource. Again, if we want to conceive something, or if there is interest in advancing this work at your organization, what might that look like? What ideas do you have? And where should action be taken? And I'm going to pass it over to Chioki, who apparently needs absolutely no introduction.
I do, because I'm sure not everyone knows who Chioki is. Telus for Corporation for a Skilled Workforce. So great to see all of you. I live in Detroit, and love seeing everyone's faces in the ELAC community. And so what we really want you to think about is, has this work been done before in some iteration? It might be something that you have done individually as an organization. I know there's some phenomenal youth serving organizations on this call who do a lot of great work at making sure youth voice is heard. So what does that look like? What have you done? Have you, were there challenges in doing that, right? So you have to have, for folks that are 18, you have to have parental sign off to kind of get youth in the room. That can be a challenge. So really think about what has been done before. If anyone wants to come off mute, you can go ahead and do that if you'd rather say it out loud.
Yeah, so if you can get on and type it in, that's great. If you want to stick it in the chat, we can also stick it, we can transcribe it over, or like Chioki said, if you want to unmute yourselves and go ahead and say it out loud, that's also fine too. I know some people might be driving or not in front of a laptop, so.
I'm seeing a visiting bee, a visiting lion. So it sounds like there is some activity. We're going to pilot for the first time at CSW the use of the timer feature on the IPO team, which is super exciting. And some might even say innovative. And yeah, Chioki, I might ask you to also help me in just kind of elevating some of the content that's finding its way into the mural board.
Mm-hmm. So I'd love to hear a little more about this customer insights focus groups. What were the questions that you were asking? What did you hear from this?
Hey everyone, this is Kevin Nod from Detroit at Work. Yeah, I put that in there. So Detroit at Work is the public workforce agency for the city of Detroit. And, you know, we do a lot of surveying and focus groups that are targeted towards specific programs that we run. But this series of focus groups came up a couple of years ago when there was this real debate going on. Employers were saying people just don't want to work anymore. On the other hand, we had job seekers saying, hey, I'm applying to tons of jobs and I'm not getting interviews. And so we, you know, wanted to go out into the community and talk to people and kind of try and understand these dynamics better. And I think, you know, it was successful in some ways because the conversation was so open-ended. I think it was really focused on, hey, where are you at? What would you like to do? Are you working or not working? Why not? And really trying to kind of take those open-ended conversations and then formulate from there, what are, you know, new programs, changes in the way we deliver programs and resources that could, you know, meet some of the needs or the situations that we were hearing about in these focus groups. So can get more into challenges and other stuff down the line, but yeah, that's what came to mind for me immediately.
Thank you. I'm also saying, yeah, challenge is the time commitment needed. It can be, I know we ran into challenges of even scheduling time for some folks. Early morning works, daytime works, sometimes nighttime works, but people have different life commitments, work commitments that can get in the way of convening everyone at the same time.
Chioki, I know you have to hop in a second. There is one, if whoever put this into the group wants to elaborate, one process I've always been really fascinated about is funders and young people coming together around ideas. And I see this second to the top left sticky of bringing a group of youth funders and hosting an HCD session that included the co-creation of ideas. Would love to hear about that if whoever wrote that is comfortable sharing more.
Cool. That's Courtney. During my time at Boys and Girls Clubs, we were trying to reimagine the spaces. We did not have funding, so that was just a really cool way that we convened. So to make this possible, and again, different but similar in the sense that this process can be used however or wherever, created this tool. And it was more so a map, right? And the goal was really to allow these funders and youth to kind of reimagine like career pathways as a program. And so we literally had the map and allowed them to kind of just imagine what would be possible. And some of the ideas that came out of that was esports. They were really, well, they didn't call it esports, but it was gaming rooms. However, the career pathway that we were able to kind of lead into that was esports. Like there are careers within that, from streaming, computer science, data science, you name it. And another thing was this sense around a music studio. Cool thing is, by having the funders there, by having the youth and the families there, everything was funded.
That's
Yeah, human-centered design was the process that we used to kind of like get to some of those ideas and insights.
And Courtney, I wasn't trying to do the thing they do at the Apollo where they play a noise to try and move someone to the next speaker. I was just realizing that I'm not in love with the timer feature, seeing it in use. I'm seeing a lot of activity in the concerns box. And obviously people can kind of navigate this on their own, but I do want to recognize that it seems like the group is moving over here, and remind people of the prompt, the guiding questions and the focusing questions, with the guiding being, what are your concerns? The focusing being, what concerns are rising up? What else should we consider before trying to move this work into an EELAC space or conceptualizing something new? I wonder, Marwa, you're a great person to speak about this. I wonder, just kind of from the participant perspective, were there any like barriers or challenges that made it difficult for you to participate? And would ask if you would share to the extent that you feel comfortable.
Yes, sure, Alex. Actually, I have an unfortunate experience with a mandated workforce program, because I relocated to Michigan 3 years ago, and with my 2 daughters, and my husband is still overseas. So it was so hard for me to adapt in the first few months. So I participated in this workforce program so that I can get into the system, know more about the job market here in the US. And I thought it may help me to adapt, and also help my daughters to adapt. So I didn't feel that I belong to this workforce program because maybe of cultural differences, maybe because I have a different perspective about life, about work, and about family. I was actually looking for life-work balance because I prioritize my family in the first place. And I also resided in my parents' house, so I have to care for them because they have a lot of health issues. And I have to help myself to adapt, and help my daughters also to adapt and regulate. So this experience, it was like a burden on me. I felt all the time like I'm pressured, I'm overwhelmed, I'm like I didn't feel like I belonged to them, or I wasn't heard. I tried to speak about my point of view, but I felt they do not care. All they cared were for me to have a job from 8 to 5, 40 hours per week, which was impossible for me at that time. And I kept saying that I can't, because I can't in my current situation. I just wanted to be heard and contained. That's all. So I was always threatened for triage because I have to find work. Otherwise, they can't put in their data that they did an achievement. I was just a number in their program. So I signed out of the program because it overwhelmed me. and added a lot of pressure to my life, which was already under pressure. Then I was fortunate enough to participate in the workforce program with Zaman, and I have undergone the culinary arts training and the workforce program with them. After that, I joined, also they offered me the opportunity to be an advisory council member in this project, worker-centered benchmarking project. I was so excited to participate in this project to make a difference in others participants' lives. Since I have this unhappy experience, I didn't want anybody to suffer or struggle the same experience like I did. I'm sorry I took a lot of time.
No,
Thank you.
At all. Thank you.
I think that was really informative, and it's interesting to see a theme developing in this area of, it seems like, some concerns about making sure that staff have the training that they need to support these processes.
Yeah, the most important thing that I felt that I'm home and I belong. I felt that I'm heard. I didn't feel like I'm different from them. I didn't have to speak about my cultural difference because they understood. They accepted me as I am, and I felt safe to express myself without being judged.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I will say that Marwa was one of 3 advisory council members that came to the determination that one thing that she was interested in doing as a profession was to work in some research capacity, and just kind of what an interesting work-based learning opportunity doing work in this arena can be. And Christine, I see your hand and would love to hear your reaction, or have you elevate something that you might have already shared in the mural board.
I have not shared anything on the mural board, but from an organizational perspective, that story really resonated around how you keep staff focused on the people that the program is meant to serve, while you have a tremendous amount of pressure from funding sources to produce unrealistic outcomes for the population that we are serving. So your story is one, but there are thousands of other stories around that type of pressure that staff may put on participants, not because of the immense amount of pressure they're under because of how funding is structured. So I just want to lift up, like, maybe this should also be shared with funders around how they develop their outcomes. Because as soon as you started to speak, I was like, I totally know where that came from. That comes from the report that has to be done on a monthly basis, where you are required to give that number. And so it's sort of a farce that you can serve everybody. You can't serve everybody. So, but I think there's a lot of work we could do together with funders and implementers to really say, like, are the way that we're measuring success beneficial? And is it realistic for the people that we're serving, or are there other benchmarks that also determine success that are more in line? And help us to better understand, are we getting there? And is it okay to get there in 2 years instead of 1? Because for some people, it just might take 2 years. Doesn't mean they can't get there. It just means it might take longer. It might take somebody 3 months. It might take somebody until their children are out of their, are going to school full time. So I just think that story really resonated, both from like, I'm sorry that that was your experience, and I totally understand where, like, why staff might have done that, and from an organizational perspective, how you balance these demands that are unrealistic from funders.
Thank you so much for that. And want to just make space in case anyone wants to react to what Christine shared, react to what Marwa shared, or react to anything that's landing for people about concerns of centering participant voice and how programs are designed, implemented, and evaluated.
I'll jump in, Alex. This is Gigi. 100%. I mean, I think the work that we're doing here at Zaman, I mean, it's not just about our clients. I mean, we do have to look at the bigger picture, and you're really needing to create systematic and policy change. There's only so much that we can do internally, and we have to stay focused on our mission. I feel some organizations just need to check the box. But I think we're all in this work to really make impact, right? And to make impact, it's going to take time, and it's going to take processes. And I think that's the conversation. How do you educate? And I put it in one of the tiles, is how do you educate not just the workforce development community, as in policymakers and funders, but there's a lot of education that needs to happen on the employer front too, because they need to, they're set in their ways of, the algorithms and the online applications and all of that. And so we do a lot of employer engagement and employer education to say, our candidates are great candidates for you. They're not gonna get the job if they just apply online, because they're not gonna meet your online algorithm. So I think just educating the community is crucial.
So I'm gonna, in the interest of time, I'm gonna move us ahead. Gigi, thank you for that. We'll also just say, I see a lot of questions about kind of staff capacity here, and we'll say that CSW, we put out probably 120 to 140 press releases, news releases, blogs every year. And the work that Marwa and the advisory council published was the most read out of anything that we put out. I think one of Marwa and Terrell wrote a blog earlier, and it had more than 5,000 reads over the course of 2 months. And I think one of the reasons for that is a lot of the funders that we're speaking to are seeing this as the next big thing in workforce development, is getting a better understanding of what participants actually want from programs and how success should be defined. And which is to say, I think that if this was a group that was interested in saying, what could additional funding do to increase, how we provide an authentic voice for participants in the table of how we're, developing a new program, or thinking of the service strategy, or, even Gigi, to your point, like thinking about the metrics that we're considering to determine success, kind of, I think that there would be an appetite for that. And I think that that's certainly the conversations, Sonia, that you and I have had, that we've had with Fatima, and which is to say, I think that there is a lot of interest in this subject at the time, and it does represent one of the real trends we're observing, both at a local level, at a regional level, and at a national level. So now we get to leverage your all's creative hats and think about the ideas that you have for how might we be able to, what opportunities exist within the EELAC network to do more in terms of how either individual organizations or groups of organizations center participant voice in developing, implementing, and evaluating programs, and want to give folks the opportunity to provide their responses. Also want to give folks the opportunity to come off mute if there is an idea that has you feeling particularly energized, enthusiastic, or just something that you want to share with peers. I'm going to relocate this one highlighter so I can maintain my super clean rows. So I'm seeing create innovative ways to hire beyond the online application. Leverage summer jobs to create pipelines and advance mobility. Provide examples for training providers to use as add-ons to ensure the elements. Someone has figured out how to use the +1 feature, which I didn't even detail, which is cool. I see has noted, can we form a cohort of interested and willing agencies to work together to implement an evaluation process and to define some new metrics that center participants? Love that. Gigi, Sonia, also want to make space for both of you. I know this is a lane that you all have operated in extensively over the course of the last 2 to 3 years. I know you all did some really incredible focus groups with working Detroiters, and wonder, is anything that you've heard so far today sticking out to you? What are kind of some of the ideas that you have for, you know, what some sort of cohort or convening might look like within ELAC, or with select ELAC members that might opt in and want to participate?
Well, I'll just say that our focus group results mirrored the findings from this study and this work and this evaluation project. What is important to workers and job seekers are all of those things that enrich a human being, you know, feelings of satisfaction, and that you're making a difference, and that you're contributing, and you're sharing your talents, and you're learning, and you're growing, and you're respected, and, you know, all of those things that speak to a person's emotional and social experiences within an employer and a workplace or a training program, all really, really matter. And when given the chance to express that, every participant kind of expressed that sentiment to us. I think what happens in our traditional workforce development systems is that that perspective, those wants and needs are suppressed, and people become very depressed and stressed, and they just look to see where the next paycheck is coming from, and they can't get their head out of the weeds to think about next steps or the future, or have aspirations or work towards their goals. So I find this conversation and this body of work so incredibly important. And I would love to see a way that we could start to have this conversation more meaningfully within ELAC and within maybe a cohort of ELAC organizations, to see how we can layer in support to help these organizational cultures and practices migrate to do this more, and to encourage funders to invest in it. So that's where my head is at with all of this.
And that's actually makes a really nice segue into the final quadrant that we would love to generate ideas from, and that is, how should we take action? And the questions that we have for you are, what should we do next, and how might ELAC and CSW support these efforts? Again, would encourage people to be super aspirational here. Obviously, if there was any sort of cohort mechanism, it would be CSW and ELAC doing the fundraising to make that happen, but would love to just kind of hear ideas about how we might be able to support those that are interested in going further in this space. And
to also think about your institutional culture, practices, environment, and what would it take for your organization to engage?
Mhm.
There's always a will, but what is the way? And how can we help, pave that way?
There's
And
one.
Alex, there's a
Yeah, go
question.
ahead, please.
I know there's a question in the chat for Gigi also, if you want to take a look at that.
Yes, I saw the question from Kevin, which was, Gigi, Kevin from DESC is interested in learning more about techniques for educating employers on equitable hiring. That's something that we're constantly working to do better in Detroit, and wondering if you might be able to drop knowledge on what is working at Zaman.
We feel at Zaman that like I said before, it is all client-centered. And so what we tell our clients when they go to an interview, we tell them, you're interviewing the employer the same way that they're interviewing you. So if it is not going to be a good fit for you, whether it's the cultural of the organization or whatever it may be, you have the right to ask the questions that make you comfortable in that workspace. That's how we educate our clients when they go on the interviews. When it comes to the employer, we also, the first thing that we do is we invite them to learn more about Zaman and to learn about our program and to learn of what we do. During that conversation, we are, for lack of another word, educating them, enlightening them on the value of the people that graduate from our programs. I give an example all the time. People have heard me say it. One of our first employer partners, when we reached out to him, actually, he had reached out to us because he knew we had a sewing program. And he said, I'm looking for seamstresses. I said, okay, that's great. This is what our first, partner that we had. And I said, we're great. We have this one lady. She's amazing. She doesn't speak great English, but she sews really well. He's like, well, can she understand basic direction? I said, yeah, she'll understand you and she can speak back to you, but and the joke was, he's like, I just need somebody to sew. It's less chatter for me on the sewing floor. The reason I use that is because he was willing to take on somebody who's going to do the work, and he was not limiting himself by language, right? We talked to other employers, and I'm the one that put in, the algorithm is automatically you talk to them and they say, oh, well, no, I can't communicate with her. She doesn't speak English. How is she going to know what to do? And so you have to educate them and does she really need a high school diploma or a GED to run the sewing machine? She needs to know how to run a straight line, and that those are the kind of educations, like what are you really looking for in that position that you're trying to hire for? So I have little sympathy sometimes for employers to say we can't find workers, because to them, it's like, well, are you creating your own barriers to entry into your workforce, right? Because you're saying, I need a GED. I mean, even our workforce training programs, why do you need a high school diploma to become a seamstress? Why are we now letting people go in? Like for us at Zaman, I mean, if you can go in and you can sew and you can read the basic recipes, you're going to be in our training program and we're going to find you a job. So those are the kind of the education, but it's not, I guess, in a short version, we invite them to Zaman to have that conversation, for them to see what we do, to see the quality of the people that we serve, see them actually working on site and help change their mindset.
And Kevin, to also just follow up on that point that Gigi made, we brought in a national expert to the Workforce Benchmarking Network Detroit cohort, Dan Roten, who's the executive director of HopeWorks in Camden, New Jersey, who was saying, one of the questions that was asked of him was, what do you do if you're working with a company that, is not in an exemplary place in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion? And their thinking was, if it's 2024 and there are no Black and brown people working at a business, then this is likely not a business that is going to provide a sense of safety and belonging to the individuals that are served by the workforce system. And the belief was it was not the place of the workforce provider to be trying to turn people on to the benefits of diversity, equity, and inclusion. That, you know, there had to be some sort of baseline level of cultural competency in order to have access to the kinds of individuals that were being trained by HopeWorks. I will say HopeWorks provides really high-level Google GIS training, and the investment per person is rather expensive. So maybe that's a luxury that they have that individuals at the public systems level don't have. But I do also wonder about, like, you know, harkening back to Marwa's experience navigating a program where, you know, she was constantly kind of sharing her situation and that was falling upon deaf ears. Just wondering, you know, does there need to be some sort of baseline level of cultural competency in order to gain access to the services that we're offering? Trina, thank you for patiently waiting while I got on my soapbox, but would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, my thought on this particular issue is to Gigi or whoever are kind of putting people, once they're trained, out to employers. Is there some sort of ranking system? So do you kind of say, we put to 20 different employers, give us feedback on what your experience is, and maybe those that fall in the bottom 20, the bottom 2 or 3, we won't send them to you anymore. I mean, so if there's some sort of way to rank how employers do with our vulnerable populations once they're in the workforce. And I don't think it should fall on one organization. I think it needs to be a little more systemic. But if we know that some places aren't really good for people who speak English as a second language, or people who, whatever it is, you know, don't keep sending people there for them to be harmed. But I know that's hard to do, but figuring out if we could, at least amongst ourselves, have some sort of a, you know what, this probably isn't a good place for our more vulnerable employees.
Mhm.
And we've experienced that as well. I mean, I'll tell you what our process is. We will go visit the location first. And if they're not gonna let us go visit, then, you know, there's a problem, you know, that kind of stalls it right there, right? We need to understand the culture because we feel that they trust us, right? So our clients trust us and they're going to do what we tell them to do, right? If we tell them this is a great place, because we're selling it to our client too. We're selling that this place is amazing and you're going to have a great experience. So we have to tell them that you're going to go there and you're going to do great. So we're interviewing the employer as much and we're educating the employer. And what we've heard and what we've seen from employers who welcome all kinds of diversity is their retention is higher. They've made accommodations for different reasons, and they speak about the accommodations that they've made for, you know, their employees and their population. And the employees end up, like, because of that sense of comfort and that sense of belonging, they're invested in the organization. They're willing to go above and beyond. So I think just being at the mercy of the employer for our population is not the best fit. It has to be a win-win on both sides. And they need to value them. They need to value us and they need to value the people that we're sending to them. If they want top candidates from Zaman, they have to be, you know, because they are getting top candidates.
I want to.
No,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kevin.
I won't take up too much more time. I really appreciate the responses because I think we're trying to do similar things. And I agree with everything that's been said. I think, you know, I think the situation is that even sometimes when we get a great employer that we seem to have a great relationship with, maybe, you know, there's some turnover, a new, you know, hiring manager comes on and it feels like, you know, there's this whole new process of like re-education and just the scale of trying to do that work with, you know, so many of the employers in Detroit. You know, it really takes, I think, developing meaningful relationships, doing things like going on site and having those visits. And so, yeah, just always trying to kind of think creatively about how we can do that work more efficiently and effectively. And Dr. Shanks, I think your point about, you know, some sort of ranking system is also very well taken. We're trying to figure out, you know, the right way to do something like that. So we'll update you if we have anything to show for that soon. So thanks, everyone.
Question for this group is anyone doing anything like creating good faith commitments or good faith agreements with employer partners? It's a practice that we've been hearing about a lot from our New York City WBN members who are just kind of going through the process at the beginning of a relationship and establishing expectations of the parties. And it could be like, I know one of the things that we're seeing getting a lot of inclusions in good faith agreements is not scheduling participants for clopenings, where someone would be closing one night and opening the next night. I think for workforce development providers might be, not sending participants that we genuinely don't think have a high likelihood of success at the employer. And would just be curious if anyone from the ELAC community is delving into that space at all.
Well, I think a lot of it is the particular relationship you have with the hiring manager or the HR rep at the company. That personal communication between the business, like the job developer, whoever's making that connection with the employer and has that relationship, constantly staying in communication. That's where the lever of influence is, from my past experiences.
Well, I want to be cognizant of time and just say, I think we heard such rich ideas from all of you, from Gigi, from Marwa, from Terrell, Sonia and Fatima. It was really great to have you all uplift some of what you've heard from your focus groups that I think are really a must read for anyone, regardless of whether you're in workforce or just wanting to understand what people want. And Fatima, I'm going to pass it back over to you to close us out.
Thank you so much, Alex, Marwa, Terrell, Gigi, and our ELAC table for pitching. And Alex, at the beginning when we were talking, we were like, we're not sure if we're going to have enough people or the right people. And then I saw all the names in the room and I'm like, oh my God, this is like the best group that we could have had to be able to discuss and talk about these things. So as a reminder, all of these conversations are recorded, and I actually wanted to also talk about something exciting that is happening with ELAC is we have a new website. So our website has now got launched officially, and I'm just gonna drop the link in the chat, but here's our new website. Sorry for all my tabs on my screen, but we've got all this on our website. I know that there's been so many times when so many of you were like, how can you explain ELAC to everybody? And so here's what you do. But even more importantly is that all the presentations that we've had at ELAC are all here, as well as all of our research and materials. And as a reminder, I mean, really, like the research and materials, so much of this has been developed through us, not the team at University of Michigan, but really like all of us at this table. So I just want to, like, this is our collective work for the last 5 years. So I'm gonna drop this in the chat. And then all of the presentations, the monthly presentations will be updated onto this ELAC website. And as usual, we will always have the newsletter that comes out and this time what I'll make sure to do is also add Gigi and Marwa and Terrell's contact information. So Alex, if you don't mind just sending me all of that. And the PowerPoint from today's session. The last thing that I wanted just to update, thank you all for staying on. Appreciate all of your time. I think what we're going to do as we move forward in ELAC is not necessarily go the entire duration of the 2 hours. I know that that gets a lot for everybody because we want to take a break in the middle either. So probably we're going to try to stick to like hour and a half, hour 40-minute meetings. Thank you so much for joining. For those that attended our symposium at Tech Town, thank you so much for attending that. We have so many findings that came out of that symposium that us and the Detroit Future City group are going through And we will be doing a report out to everybody that attended to our ELAC table. And for those of you that were on our advisory committee for that symposium, we'll be making sure to incorporate all of you into that report out. So that's kind of the next steps that we're working on at ELAC. We are not going to be having a July or August meeting. Rather, we'll probably have a symposium report out one of those months, probably closer to the end of the summer. Summer just gets so hard. I'm so happy that all of you were able to get on today, but summer does get hard and everybody's schedules change and children's schedules change and life schedules change in the summer. So we're going to try to lessen a little bit of our convenings, but definitely you will be hearing from us. And that being said, though, keep in touch. Let us know if you need anything. Let us know if we can help you. And Trina just put in the chat, if Shauna, Vanya, and Alfonso can stay for 10 minutes afterwards, that would be great too. Again, really, thank you so much for Alex and Gigi, and especially for Marwa and Terrell for really coming out and putting yourselves out there and talking to us. I really appreciate that. It was so great to have you all. And that's all for today. I hope everybody has a great rest of the summer. We will be in touch, and thank you.
Can I say something?
Yeah, sure, Cynthia. Yep.
So I just heard everything, and it was so informative and really, really good for me as a newer organization. I have visited Zaman. I have met Gigi. I don't know if you remember Gigi. I came to see, what's her name? The lady who heads your organization.
Najah.
No, you met with Monica, who's our Director of Community Engagement.
Right. So I just want to let you know that we are a very new in whole this process, and we are called Hope On. We work with refugees from many countries, and we are based in Dearborn. And we do send lots of our people go to Zaman for help. For food, for clothing, for many other help to access to Samaritas, we work with the USCRI, like all these organizations we work with. So I definitely would like to connect with more people so that we can learn from you and get some more help. So we are also trying to teach English and many other programs, but also to help them resettle. So just to let you know, thank you so much.
Well, bye everyone. Thank you so much. Shun, if you don't mind staying on here for just a second, I asked Vanya to come back, so hopefully she will. We could just do a 5-minute touch base around Zello since we have a few minutes.
Thank you, everybody, for getting on.
Absolutely. This is a great conversation. And Sonia, I know you were asking about Zello too, so I just thought it might be a good idea just to quickly touch base here.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, Shana, so I saw the back and forth we had in the chat. I can reach out to Zello and see if they're available on Wednesday or Friday. Because I think if we can kind of get them to just give you a temporary, oh, Shana left. Okay, well. Well, I sent them an email asking them to come back on, so maybe they'll come back on. But if not, everybody's starting their orientations for GDYT right after 4th of July, and there's just a few things that need to be worked out. And so I thought it'd be easier to take the last 20 minutes of this call than to schedule another meeting, but maybe we'll have to schedule another meeting.
Tina, hone in on the module. Have we finalized that? Are we following the recommendation that Sky sent to us?
Well, the big thing that Alfonso and Vanya asked, oh great, is can they get access? because before they want to use it, they want to make sure they can test it ahead of time. Hey, Alfonso, can you hear us? And so I think that they have to either through City Connect or their own organizations have some sort of organizational access. Alfonso, Sonia just asked, did you get a chance to look at those Zello modules, and is that working for you? Do you need a little bit more from us and or Zello?
Nope, I think those work. I just got done connecting with our program team. They said those modules should be fine. They're working, and I'm hopefully we'll be good. So I don't think we need anything more from you all. So I appreciate that. Sorry, I've been jumping from meeting to meeting.
I understand. And so of the student that you want to pilot with, are all of them DPSED students, or will some of them need some sort of extra access? That's the one question we're trying to pass by Zello before you guys get started.
Some of them will probably need extra access because we have some DEPSA students, and so DEPSA didn't use that platform. Only our DPSCD students were using that platform.
Now, what does DEPSA stand for?
Detroit Edison Public Charter.
Oh, okay. Yep. So it's a charter school. Okay.
Yep.
Well, that's what I'm going to try to coordinate with Shana and Zello, just to see, even if it's just 10 or so, extra access points without having to go through a whole new process. But I don't know how easy that's going to be. So I'm going to try to do that with Shana first, so it could be across GDYT. So so we don't have to negotiate with you and then negotiate with Uni and then you can negotiate with whoever. So if we can get that the next couple of days, we'll let you know. But I'm glad at least the modules are working for you. And I'll circle back around for your. Do you know how many students are Detroit?
We have, I think maybe 10 or 12. I gotta double check on that because I know we have our overall programming. We have 22 students total, but not all of them are Detroit Edison. So I gotta check.
If you could just email Sonia or I with that number, then we can kind of have an idea of how many accounts we need. And since I have you on the phone, Sonia, can you work with Alfonso to make sure we get an invoice for them so we can pay them their initial $1,000? And then Alfonso, just so you know, there'll probably be another $1,000 at the back end once we know how many students there are, because we want to pay the students first and then circle back around and give your organization money again. So it can literally be a paragraph saying, we're setting up Zello with these many students and we're working as part of, your pilot. And then with that, we can make sure your organization gets paid.
No, that's perfect. I just told Sonia that yesterday when we were at another meeting that we had got that invoice getting together for you all.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining back on. And if you don't need anything else outside of getting started, and we'll circle back around with you about how to get those additional accounts.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
No, thank you.
All right. Y'all have a great one. Bye.
Thank you.